Okay, so the outline that you've kind of created, and we're starting to fill in, we'll give you some more time to kind of fill in a few more of those holes if you still need a little bit more time. But let's kind of move into kind of a separate part of the program on how to do question and answer and impromptu speaking. That's one of the things that tends to be a little bit more challenging for folks. And in fact, a lot of times when we're doing our classes, we'll hand out a vision sheet and we'll ask people, hey, what is it that you want to get most out of the class? And the thing that's almost always checked off on every single one of these sheets is impromptu speaking. I hate it when I have to speak on an impromptu basis. I hate it when my boss calls on me in the meeting and I have to speak up. One of the things that you want to keep in mind about impromptu speaking, for the most part anyway, is that a lot of times it's not nearly as impromptu as you might think. So I'll give you an example of how impromptu speeches aren't necessarily as impromptu as what we might think anyway. When I first started teaching class and when we got to the impromptu speaking part, one of the guys in one of my first couple of classes, he's like, oh, thank God. He's like, I'm terrified when this happens. He said, every Tuesday, we have a staff meeting, and every Tuesday my boss goes around the table and says, hey, can you give us an update on your project? And everybody in the class is kind of looking at him and go, dude, really? If it happens every Tuesday, if it happened the last 12 Tuesdays, it's probably going to happen this Tuesday as well, right? So that's not impromptu. That's something that you should be prepared for. And in a lot of cases, the best way to deal with impromptu speeches is to be prepared for them in advance. Be prepared when they come up. But just so you know, a lot of times when we're asked to speak on an impromptu basis, it's very similar to situations that we have on a day-to-day basis. Like, for instance, anybody ever answer their phone? Ever answer your phone? Answer your phone, you talk to somebody on the phone, that's an impromptu speech. You do it every day. Most people do anyway. Every day, I know young people don't do that anymore, they just text. But that's still an impromptu text anyway, but there you go. Right, but it's an impromptu speech. When you meet somebody at the water cooler, that's an impromptu speech. When we go to lunch with a friend, that's an impromptu speech. We do it every single day. The only difference is that a lot of times when we're standing up in front of a group, there's more pressure on us, and for some reason we kind of get that brain lock and we don't think as clearly as what we might. So let me kind of give you a couple of different techniques. There's a 3-step process that you can use in order to respond to, especially a question. That's one of the more difficult things. So if somebody interrupts you during the middle of your speech and they ask you a question, how do you answer the question? One of the things you want to keep in mind about responding to questions is if those questions happen to be what we call kind of negative questions, or a question where somebody's trying to put you on the spot or test you, if you just answer the question with a fact or a detail, there's a good chance that the person will want to be argumentative with you. They want to poke holes in that. So you might be setting yourself up for a follow-up question. Better way to answer the question is if you use a 3-step process that we came up with years ago. We call it the IAB formula. It's just an acronym. The I stands for an incident, which basically means a story or an example. So if you can respond to that question with an example or a story from your own personal experience, most of the time that will diffuse the confrontation. It will diffuse the person from being argumentative with you. And then if you answer the question, give an action or a moral of the story or what I want you to take from this story is, and then tell them how they're going to benefit from it, a lot of times that 3-step process will kind of end any of those questions cold and make you look really professional when you answer the question. One of the most challenging parts of this, by the way, is coming up with a story. Most of the time, if somebody asks us a question, for the most part, we can tend to answer the question pretty quickly. We already know the answer to that question. And if we have the answer to that question, most of the time we can kind of come up with a benefit as well. So if I know the answer to the question is how will the person benefit from this? Those two things typically aren't nearly as difficult as coming up with a quick story or an incident. One of the things that we kind of figured out years ago was that in order to kind of come up with an incident on pretty much any topic without having to think about it is to make your mind think that you've already come up with the answer. So like, for instance, your brain is this incredible hard drive that remembers every single thing that you've ever experienced in your life. The problem is that the brain has filters on it, otherwise we'd all be schizophrenic. So if we had every single memory that we've ever had going on in our brain at any given time, we'd go crazy. So the brain has filters, and if you can bypass those filters, you can come up with the perfect story to answer a question for just about any topic. So we'll give you a quick test here. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm just gonna throw out some random topic, something totally unrelated to anything that you've experienced, at least in the classroom here in the last couple of days. So I know that you're not actually thinking about this. And all I want you to do is immediately after I give you the topic, just verbally say the words, "That reminds me of the time." And then once an image pops in your head of some incident related to that from your own life experience, just have a seat. That make sense?
So you're going to stand up?
You're going to stand up. So go ahead, please stand real quick. Please stand real quick. I'm just going to throw out something totally random, so just a random topic here. And then you're going to say, "That reminds me of time." So go ahead and practice that.
That reminds me of the time.
All you have to do is just say, "That reminds me of the time," right? So I'll say the random topic, you say, "That reminds me of the time," as soon as an image pops in your head or something. Nobody's going to speak on this, by the way. There's no pressure here. So even if it's an embarrassing story, you can still sit down because nobody's going to actually speak on this topic. So, let's something weird. Let's see. How about a time that you overindulged on either food or beverage? Just say, "That reminds me." You guys already said it.
That reminds me of the time.
And you haven't just got to sit down. It's like, I didn't even have to say it. I'm down, right? Yes, that reminds me of time. So that reminds me of time. Yeah. But anyway, the point is that it doesn't really. I mean, I know we haven't talked about that. You know, that's an impromptu. It's an impromptu topic. The key thing is that if somebody's trying to put us on the spot, we want to come up with an incident or a story related to that thing that they're asking us about. And a lot of times that will kind of diffuse the tension, it'll reduce your nervousness, and then when you give the advice, they're less likely to argue with you about it. So now, in order to kind of help you with question and answer and stuff like that, what I'm asking you to do is on page number 21, there's a list of five different blanks. What I'm asking you to do is if somebody during your presentation came up with a question and they were going to ask you a question about your topic, about any of those 3 points or about the topic that you're presenting on, what question might they likely ask you about? Now, you don't necessarily have to come up with five, but just kind of try to come up with a few questions that somebody that listens to your presentation might come up with. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time helping you come up with an answer to that question that will respond with a story and an action benefit statement. So first, let's just come up with the questions first. What questions might somebody ask you about your presentation? Whatever that presentation is that you wrote, what kind of questions might they ask you about this thing?